I was 41 years old when I found out my entire life was built on a lie. Not a small lie. Not the kind of lie you discover and eventually forgive over dinner and a glass of wine. The kind of lie that reorders everything. Every memory, every family photo, every holiday, every time someone said, "You have your father's eyes," and I smiled and nodded and believed them. My name is Vivian, and this is the story of a DNA test that changed everything. It started, of all places, at my cousin's bachelorette party. We were doing one of those ancestry kits as a group activity. 12 women crowded into a hotel suite in Nashville, sipping rosé and spitting into tubes and laughing about what we might find out. Irish? Scottish? Maybe someone had Viking blood. We mailed them off and forgot about them by the time the hangover hit the next morning. 6 weeks later, my results came in. I was sitting at my kitchen table on a Wednesday morning, coffee in hand, clicking through the app like I was checking the weather. Ethnicity breakdown, family matches, distant cousins I'd never heard of. And then, at the top of the close family matches, a name I didn't recognize. Male. Age 67. The app listed him as father. I put my coffee down. I picked it up again. I put it back down. His name was Robert Callahan. He lived in Portland, Oregon, and according to every algorithm this company had built, he shared 50% of my DNA. My father, the man I had called Dad for 41 years, the man who coached my soccer team and taught me to drive and walked me down the aisle. His name was Gerald Marsh. He was 69 years old and lived 12 minutes from my house. He had no idea I was sitting at my kitchen table, coming apart at the seams. I didn't call him. I didn't call anyone. I closed the app, got in my car, and drove to a parking lot near a park I used to go to as a kid. I sat there for 2 hours, watching strangers walk their dogs. I was trying to locate myself. I felt like someone had picked up the snow globe of my life, shaken it violently, and set it back down, except nothing had landed back where it belonged. The first person I told was my husband, Marcus. We've been married 14 years. He is, without question, the steadiest human being I have ever known. The kind of man who doesn't panic, who doesn't perform calmness, who is actually, genuinely calm. When I showed him the app, he read it twice, set down his phone, and said, "Okay, what do you need right now?" Not, "Are you sure?" Not, "Maybe it's a mistake." Just, "What do you need?" I said, "I need to know if my mother knew." He said, "Do you want me to come with you?" I said yes. My mother, Patricia, is 70 years old. She lives alone since my father, Gerald, moved to a condo near the golf course after their divorce 11 years ago. She has a garden, she makes her own jam. She is the kind of woman who sends birthday cards 3 days early and always has the right thing to say at funerals. She is also, I was about to discover, a woman who had been carrying a secret for 41 years. We drove to her house on a Saturday afternoon. I had practiced what I was going to say in the car. I had planned to be measured and calm and give her a chance to explain. What actually happened was, I walked in, she took one look at my face, and she sat down on her couch and said, "You found out." Not a question, a statement. I stood in the middle of her living room and said, "Who is Robert Callahan?" She closed her eyes. "Mom." "Sit down, Vivian." "I don't want to sit down. I want you to look at me and tell me who Robert Callahan is." She opened her eyes, and I saw something I had never seen on my mother's face in 41 years. She looked cornered. "He was someone I knew before your father," she said. "Before Gerald. We were together for almost 2 years. And then we weren't. And then I met Gerald, and we got married quickly, and you were born, and I told myself that you were Gerald's, because I needed you to be Gerald's. But I wasn't. I didn't know for certain. Mom, I suspected. I never confirmed it. I put it away. I decided it didn't matter." I sat down then, not because I wanted to, but because my legs decided for me. "Does Dad know? Does Gerald know?" She was quiet for too long. "Mom." "He found out when you were 16. Someone told him. A mutual friend who knew Robert who had done the math. He came to me and I admitted it. And he stayed. He said it didn't matter. He said you were his daughter and that was the end of it." I thought about the year I was 16. I thought about my father's face that year, whether anything had seemed different. I couldn't remember. I was 16. I was barely paying attention to anything outside my own small world. "He never said a word to me," I said. "He didn't want you to know. He was terrified of losing you." I looked at my mother, this woman I had known my entire life, this woman whose handwriting I could recognize anywhere, whose perfume I would know in the dark, and I felt the ground shift underneath me. "You let me live a lie for 41 years. I protected you. From what? From knowing who I am?" She didn't answer that, because there was no good answer. I left. Marcus drove. I looked out the window the whole way home and didn't say anything, and he didn't make me. That night, I searched for Robert Callahan online. It wasn't hard. He had a LinkedIn, a Facebook page, photos. He was a retired engineer. He had been married once, divorced in his 40s. He had one son, a boy named Daniel, who was 38 and lived in Seattle. I looked at Daniel's photos for a long time. He had a jawline like mine. He had my hands. I had a brother I had never met. I didn't reach out to Robert right away. I needed time to figure out what I even wanted from him, if anything. I needed to talk to Gerald first. That was the conversation I was most afraid of. Gerald and I have always been close. He's the parent I call when something goes wrong, the parent I want in the room. He taught me to ride a bike, held my hand in the emergency room when I broke my wrist at 14, cried at my wedding without any embarrassment about it whatsoever. The thought that he had known, that he had chosen to stay, to never say a word, to absorb this secret and just keep showing up. I couldn't hold it. I drove to his condo the following Tuesday. He answered the door and took one look at me. "You know," he said, "how long have you known that I know? Your mother called me the same day you went to see her." We sat at his kitchen table, the same way we had sat together 1,000 times, doing homework, playing cards, talking about nothing. Except this was everything. "Why didn't you tell me?" I said. "After you found out, when I was 16, why didn't you?" "Because you were my daughter," he said. Full stop. The biology didn't change that. It has never changed that for me, not for one single day. "But it was my right to know." "I know." He put his hand over mine. "I know. And I'm sorry. I thought I was protecting you. I was probably also protecting myself." He paused. "I was terrified. I'm going to be honest with you about that. I was terrified that if you knew, you'd go looking for him, and you'd find something there that you couldn't find with me. I was scared of losing you." I looked at this man who had shown up every single day of my life, who had never once made me feel like anything other than his. and I started crying. Not because I was angry. I was angry, but I was also, underneath the anger, devastated on his behalf. He had carried this for 25 years. He had been afraid of losing me for 25 years. "You're my dad," I said. "You have always been my dad. A DNA test does not change that." He didn't say anything. He just held my hand. I contacted Robert Callahan 3 weeks later. I sent him a message through the Ancestry app. Simple, not aggressive, just, "I believe we are matched as close family. I'd like to talk if you're open to it." He responded within 2 hours. He had known about me. Not when I was born. My mother had never told him she was pregnant. But years later, through that same mutual friend who had eventually told Gerald, he had heard. He had tried to find my mother. She had refused contact. He had a lawyer draft a letter once. She had never responded. He had wondered about me for 40 years. We had a video call on a Thursday evening. Marcus sat with me off camera. I needed that. Robert Callahan was a quiet man with steady eyes and my hands, and a jawline I recognized from the mirror. He was nervous. I could see it. He apologized twice before I told him there was nothing to apologize for. He hadn't known. "I want to ask you something," I said. "Okay. Did you love her? My mother?" He thought about it. "I did," he said. "We were young. It ended badly. But yes, I did." We talked for 2 hours. I met Daniel, my half-brother, on a separate call the following week. He was warm and funny and had my exact laugh, which startled both of us when we realized it. He has 2 kids. I have a niece and a nephew I didn't know existed. My mother and I are working through it. It is slow and it is hard, and there are days when I am still furious at her. Days when I call her and we talk about nothing on purpose because the big conversation has already happened, and now we're just building something new out of the wreckage. She did what she thought she needed to do. I don't agree with it. I've told her that. She's heard it. We're still trying. Gerald came to Christmas. He always comes to Christmas. He sat at my table and ate my food and argued with Marcus about football and held my daughter on his lap for a full hour while she showed him something on her tablet. He is my father. He has always been my father. That is not complicated. What is complicated is Robert. What is complicated is learning, at 41, that the story you thought you were living was not the only story. That somewhere across the country, there was a man who wondered about you for decades. That you have a brother with your laugh. That genetics are real and also, simultaneously, not the whole truth. I am not the same person I was before that Wednesday morning. The woman who clicked open that app expecting to find out her great-grandmother was from Cork, Ireland, she is gone. What replaced her is someone who knows more, who questions more, who understands that the people we love most are also the people capable of the deepest silences. But here is what I also know. I am loved. I have always been loved. By a man who chose me before he even knew the full truth, and chose me again after. By a mother who made a terrible decision and has had to live with it. By a husband who, on the worst morning of my life, asked me what I needed. By a brother I didn't know I had until I was 41 years old. There's something I haven't told you yet, the part that came after all of it. The part where I had to figure out who I actually was now. Because here's what nobody prepares you for when your identity shifts like this. It doesn't just affect the past. It reaches forward. I looked at my daughter, Nora, she's 12, and I wondered if she could see the change in me. If she could tell that her mother had been quietly reconstructed from the inside. She could. Kids always can. One evening, about 2 months after everything came out, Nora sat beside me on the couch while I was staring at the wall pretending to watch television, and she said, very simply, "Mom, are you still sad about the grandpa thing?" I looked at her. "I'm not sad," I said. "I'm just rearranging." "Like your brain is reorganizing its files?" "Exactly like that." She thought about this. Then she said, "Do you still love Grandpa Gerald?" "More than ever, actually." "Then I think you're going to be okay." 12 years old. I don't know where she comes from sometimes. And then I think, she comes from me. And I come from Gerald in every way that actually matters. And somewhere in me, there is also Robert. And somewhere in Robert, there is history I don't know yet, but am slowly learning. I started driving up to Portland every couple of months. Robert and I would have lunch. Nothing dramatic, nothing scripted. He showed me photographs of his life. His son Daniel and I started texting regularly. It was strange, and it was good. It felt like finding a room in a house you'd lived in for 40 years that you never knew existed. Robert told me about my grandmother, his mother, Eleanor, who had died in 2019. She had been a piano teacher. She had won a local award for something or other. He showed me a photo. And I sat across from him in a diner in Portland, Oregon, holding a photograph of a woman I had never met, and something in her face looked familiar in a way that made my chest ache. "She would have loved you," Robert said. I didn't know what to say to that. I just nodded. I went home and cried in the shower, which is where I do my best crying, the kind where you don't have to explain it to anyone, where the water covers the sound and you can just let it happen. My mother and I had a bigger conversation about 4 months in. A real one. Not the first confrontation, which was mostly shock and anger on my part, but the second conversation. The one where I actually asked her questions and actually listened to the answers. She told me about who she was at 25. A different person than the mother I knew, she said. Someone who was scared of being alone. Someone who made quick decisions and then lived with the consequences for decades. She told me she had loved Robert, but he hadn't been ready. She told me she had loved Gerald, too, that it was not a story of one true love and one mistake. It was more complicated and more human than that. I was so afraid, she said. That's the honest answer. I was afraid of what would happen if I told the truth. I was afraid of losing Gerald. I was afraid of disrupting the life we had built. And the longer I waited, the harder it became, and the more I told myself the timing was never right. The timing was never right for 41 years, I said. I know, she looked at her hands. There is no good defense for that. I am not going to try to give you one. I respected that, actually. She didn't make excuses. She sat in the discomfort of what she had done, and she didn't try to talk her way out of it. That mattered to me. We didn't hug that day. We weren't there yet. But we sat in her kitchen and drank her tea and talked for 3 hours. And when I left, I felt something I hadn't felt in months, like the ground was slightly more solid beneath me. The hardest part of all of it, harder than the confrontations, harder than the video calls, harder even than the grief of the lost years, was the question that came at 3 a.m. The question I couldn't turn off. Who would I have been if I had known? Would I have grown up differently? Would I have gone looking for Robert at 20? Would I have had a relationship with him for 20 years instead of 2? Would I have known Eleanor before she died? Would I have grown up knowing Daniel, and would we have been close in the way siblings can be close when they grow up together? I'll never know. That's the answer. I will simply never know, and I have to find a way to make peace with not knowing. What I do know is this. At 41, I have more family than I did before. I have a father who chose me and has never stopped choosing me. I have a biological father who is careful and kind and learning how to be something to me without overreaching. I have a brother who texts me stupid memes and calls me on my birthday, and whose kids call me Aunt Vivian like it's the most normal thing in the world. I have a mother who is flawed in a very specific and consequential way, and who is trying, and who I am choosing, not without conditions, not without ongoing work, to stay in relationship with. And I have Marcus, who on that Wednesday morning said simply, "What do you need?" and has continued asking me that question every single day since. The DNA test cracked my life open. What I found inside was not what I expected, but it was real. And real, even when it's complicated, even when it hurts, is so much better than a comfortable lie. I used to think that identity was something fixed, something you were born with and carried. Now I think it's something you keep building, something made of choices as much as blood, made of who shows up, who stays, who tells the truth eventually, who holds your hand when the ground shifts. I am Vivian, daughter of Gerald, who chose me, daughter of Robert, who wondered about me, mother of Nora, who told me I was going to be okay, wife of Marcus, who just keeps asking the right question. That's who I am, all of it. And I am still learning what that means. If this story hits something in you, if you've ever wondered about your own story, or carried a secret, or discovered something that changed everything, you are not alone. Subscribe, because every story on this channel is real, it is raw, and it is worth your time. And drop a comment below. Where in the world are you watching this from? I read every single one.